Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and we're really back. For those that are on audio platform, you're wondering what we're talking about. Well, we started a show, didn't really go too well, and so now we decided to start another show, which is hopefully going to be live on YouTube here shortly. But nonetheless, I'm Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and it is exciting just to be able to talk about actual football right now. There's a live football game going on that I'm not getting to watch. I'll get there before too long. The Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champions, are hosting the Houston Texans, and we'll probably give you some updates on that as we go. But I'm joined as always by Bryan Anthony Davis and Dave Schofield. What's going on, gentlemen? Bryan, we'll start with you. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. So glad to be here. Really glad to be talking about real football. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I want everyone to know that we said that we're starting over. That wasn't our fault. That was a technical issue. Some people were saying it's fixed, and some people say that it's not. So, which was funny because people were saying it was fixed before we stopped the last show. So it's hard to say. So we just got to roll with it.
Yeah, we're going to roll with it. And if as long as it sounds good to us, I'm assuming it's going to sound good on our audio, which is ultimately why we do these shows on YouTube anyways. So Bryan, I know you just did this, and I hate to ask you to do it again, but please update everyone on the upcoming schedule for our podcast platform, because it has changed slightly. So you can just say, things that like the Steelers preview is not going to change. It's going to remain on Thursdays, typically around 9 p.m. What is going to change for the upcoming season?
Well, let's talk about our AM network of shows. We're going to have the post-game show coming out on Monday morning, usually after a Sunday game. That'll be a little different this weekend because it is a Monday night game. But so usually Monday AM, you will have the post-game show. You'll also have the live mic on Tuesday, Let's Ride on Wednesday, Steelers Stat Geek on Thursday, Let's Ride on Friday, and Touchdown Under on Saturday in the mornings. At noon, we are going to have some offerings as well. A lot of it will be our YouTube shows that will carry over, except for on Monday, you're going to have a special edition of Let's Ride at noon. The Hangover on Tuesday, Scobro Show on Wednesday, Know Your Enemy on Thursday, Steelers Preview on Friday, and Steelers Brunch with Tony will be on Saturday. That will be live on YouTube, and then we'll have it over on the podcast platform as well. In the PM, we're going to have lots of fun. On Monday nights, we're going to have the Retro Show. The Mike Tomlin press conference wrap-up will be on Tuesday evenings. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we will have injury reports. And Saturday, we will have our pregame show. The YouTube channel is going to look a lot like the same on Sundays. We're going to have the postgame show. The Hangover will be Monday nights on YouTube. Scobro Show on Tuesday. Know Your Enemy on Wednesday. Steelers Preview on Thursday. We take a hiatus on Friday and take a break. And Steelers Brunch with Tony again on Saturday, guys.
Yeah, and it's, in other words, let me take everything that Bryan just said and really put it into a sentence. We're offering a lot of content.
You think about 8 shows?
A lot. I'm done.
We're basically tripling and quadrupling. Depends how you're looking at it. But there's going to be a lot of stuff offered. So it's going to be fantastic for you.
For me, I look at it this way. I love sports talk radio. Yet I can't stand to hear people talk about anyone that's not the Steelers. And so if you're someone like me, I mean, I used to listen to Dan Patrick and all these people, and they would talk about the Steelers for like one segment, and I would just cling to everything. Like, oh yeah, they're finally talking about the Steelers, and then this. This is just Steelers all the time, and we have more than enough content. You combine that with BehindTheSteelCurtain.com and the fact that we're churning out so much content there, and all sorts of content, whether it's breaking news, commentary, film room stuff, everything that you would possibly want is there for you. Now, we know that the majority of our audio listeners are listening to us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. And all we ask is that every week, please give us a 5-star rating if you like the content, and give us a good comment. And I always tell people, this is on my solo show in the morning, if you give us a good comment, I will read it on the air live on Thursday. So we have 2 new comments. Logan 015275 said, man, you can't get better Steelers content anywhere else. These guys know everything about the Steelers, whether it's statistics or history, and what a great group of podcasters. I feel like I know them more than just listening and watching their podcasts. Not many podcasters are as consistent with the uploads and treat you like family. The best part is the podcasts are only getting better. Then I don't even know how to say this person's name, so we're just going to read it. They give you so much to listen to that you will never get bored or discouraged with their channel. So many opinions because they have multiple speakers and hosts. It's actually a one-stop shop for your Steelers information. That's awesome. Thank you for the comments. We appreciate it. And you know what? We're actually getting ready to talk about Pittsburgh Steelers football. I know there's a game on. I don't care about that game. There's a game on Monday night that everyone's going to be geeked up for. Remember, folks, I've said it a lot. If you listen to my other shows, it's at 7:15. I would hate to have someone join us next week and say, I almost missed the first half because I didn't think the game started till 8:20, a typical start time for Monday Night Football. It starts at 7:15. Be prepared. Guys, excitement level from 0 to 10, 10 being I'm about to go run through a wall, 0, I'd rather watch paint dry. Where's your excitement level for this upcoming game, Dave?
Well, no matter what I say, Brian's going to say higher. So I'll go with 12. I mean, no, seriously, I'm through the roof. I'm honestly concerned about being able to stay awake for this game Monday, even though it's only starting at 7:15, because I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to sleep the night before. That's how excited I am. It has been so long. We have not seen the Steelers on the field in a contest this year. You know, the last time we saw them was 2019. So I'm excited. I'm ready to roll. You could tell Bryan, he's going to bust some buttons off of his shirt or something like that because he's so excited. Let's just get Monday here. I just need Monday to get here.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you ask my name. My thoughts, if I have to give it a number, I'm just going to say this: 74, 75, 78, 79, 95. I know that wasn't a championship year. I'm going to say 05 and 08. That's how excited I am.
Wait, you said 95?
That was an exciting year, even though they didn't win it.
Well, then why didn't you say 2010?
That wasn't as exciting as 95.
95 ended the drought.
And 10.
Yeah. I'm really excited. Right now, I'm like a level 7, if I'm being honest. I'm super excited, but it won't really hit me until Monday. Sunday will be fun, although I'm sure my family's going to drag me out to do something instead of just sitting my butt on the couch watching football games. But Monday, it's like that giant crescendo. You build up to it all day. It's going to be great. Has been some news this week. We'll talk about that to get the show started off. First and foremost, the injury report. Dave, why don't you fill us in on both the Giants and the Steelers' first reported injury report?
Okay, well, when it comes to the Steelers, they only had 2 players listed on the injury report, and unfortunately, neither of them were practicing. It was David DeCastro, as expected. Just to clarify, he has not been ruled out. That was a report that the Steelers don't anticipate on him playing, but there's nothing official with him being ruled out yet. But he did not practice, and unfortunately, neither did wide receiver Deontay Johnson. He was out with a foot injury. Now, when it comes to DeCastro, one thing we did find out is what his lower body injury is, and it's a knee injury is what they have listed. So that's what's going on for the Steelers. And for the Giants, they had, let me see, I got to look at it. They only had 1 player that did not practice, and that was due to illness. That was linebacker Marcus Golden. And they had 4 players who were limited. Probably the most notable from them is wide receiver Golden Tate.
Yeah. Hamstring tightness.
And then they had a tight end that was limited. The 3 guys that were limited with an injury were hamstring, and then there was another defensive back, Adrian Colbert, who was limited with an illness. So Tay Crowder was the other linebacker with the hamstring.
That Deontay Johnson foot thing, I'm really anxious to see what happens on Friday with their second practice. I hope that he at least returns in some way, something like that, because those foot injuries can linger. You would hate to have that happen. Here's a question that's not really injury related, but I thought about this. I did a podcast for Big Blue View with Ed Valentine, the editor there at Big Blue View. And I told him this morning, I tried to think of 10 players on the New York Giants roster. I couldn't do it. I literally could. I don't know who these players are. I don't know who these. Yeah, I've heard of Golden Tate, and I know Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley and Evan Ingram. They just picked up Logan Ryan, so I know him. I feel like I'm out. Sterling Shepard, I know that. I mean, I don't have a roster here. I hope people understand. I can't think of 10 players. Bryan, what is going on with the Giants? Like, I don't even recognize this team anymore.
I think they are in full rebuild mode. That's really where they are right now. With Eli gone, with you had to draft a guy very early in the form of Saquon Barkley a couple years ago. You just got Andrew Thomas in the top 10, the stud offensive lineman. And then they're bringing in guys like Jabril Peppers and Kevin Zeitler from the Odell Beckham Jr. trade from a year ago. So, we're looking at this team turning over, and that's exactly. I mean, it's the progression of losing that franchise quarterback, which we might want to pay attention to this.
Yeah, you're right, Dave. What are your thoughts about the Giants? I mean, just off the cuff, I mean, the Giants seem kind of blah to me.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel with the Giants. And that's why I guess when we'll talk about it later, I would say I'm not overly concerned outside of maybe one player who I will talk about. Yeah. I'm not worried about the Giants as much as I'm worried about the Steelers. It's really what the Steelers need to do, because I don't really, like you say, there's a lot of names out there. They have apparently a very inexperienced offensive line, and that's going to, if you watch last night's show, or if you didn't watch or listen to last night's show with Know Your Enemy, you really missed out, because you were really able to learn some stuff about the Giants there. But they're going to have some problems with that Steelers defensive front with these no-name guys that we don't know who they are.
And we'll talk about the Giants, and I don't want to talk a ton about them, because like I said, if you listen to Know Your Enemy, I mean, they ripped to that roster and the matchups. It was a really good show, so make sure you check that out with Michael Beck and Jeffrey Benedict. But as it pertains to the Steelers, my question for you all tonight is, I watched the third part of Ben Roethlisberger's docuseries, got super jacked up like I always do. Mm-hmm. What do you all think would be a successful night from a stat line perspective for Roethlisberger in his first game back? He said on Wednesday when he spoke to the media, he's going to be nervous. He's going to have butterflies. He's going to be shaky. That's natural. He hasn't played in over almost a year. Bryan, if you were to give me a stat line and you say this would be solid, I would be really, really happy if Roethlisberger was able to do that. What would that look like for you?
240 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions.
Okay. Dave, what about you? What's your stat line?
That would be a perfect night.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't complain.
One win.
Dave?
Yeah.
Well, come on, Dave. I'm asking for a stat line. I know that's a win.
I'm gonna say 265, 2 touchdowns. I'm going to say the streak continues. We're going to say 1 interception.
I forgot all about that. I swear I forgot all about that. So, you brought it up. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going to say. And honestly, I would not be shocked if these yards are front half loaded, meaning first half loaded. If the Steelers can get a lead, Ben might be on pace to really have a big night and then not need to do it. So that's why I'm not saying that has to be that way, but I'm thinking that's one way it could happen.
Can I say one more thing, Jeff?
Yeah.
A successful stat for Ben Roethlisberger would be James Conner over 100 yards too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That would be a great Ben stat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think the odds are that Roethlisberger, he normally starts off slow. Everyone's expecting to start slow. What if he had a game where he just threw for, 5 touchdowns? Doesn't throw for a lot of yards, but just really puts up a lot of touchdowns. He had one of those games against Carolina on Thursday night a couple years ago, just where he's seeing everything so well. The defense that he's playing is, let's be honest, not that great. You all think that he could maybe come out of the gates really swinging, or do you think this is going to be if we can get, like you all said, 250 around there, two touchdowns, we'd be happy. I mean, what are your all thoughts as Ben coming out and just slinging it and just proving he wants to prove a point? He does. He wants to prove he's back. Dave, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's kind of what I was talking about, is if I think Ben's going to get to about those stats. If he starts out on fire, then there's no reason for them to push that elbow or anything further, because if he comes out on fire, I'm thinking the defense is not going to come out and have a poor showing, in all honesty. So if they have that lead, he's not going to need to keep flinging it around. That's why I say a lot of times quarterbacks with really good defenses don't put up monster numbers, because they don't have to. And that's just what I think is going to be. I mean, Ben could throw for 200 yards in the first quarter, and I still don't think he'll hit 300.
Okay, there you go. Bryan, what about you? You think Ben lights it up in this game, or do you think it's just a little bit more mundane?
I don't think he needs to light it up either. I think they're going to rely on the run. Mike Tomlin's not the guy that cares about Ben lighting it up and Ben's stats. All he cares about is Dave's stat earlier, the W. And they're going to you never see this team run it up or try to run it up. And I could honestly say I think that they're going to try to use the bell cow. And we heard the bell cow word this week with James Conner. And they are going to try to establish that.
That's Jeff's impersonation of a bell cow.
Is that? I didn't hear a moo in there.
You didn't hear that? You didn't hear a
Well, gosh, I mean, I can tell Mrs. Hartman does most of the children's book readings in the house. How's the chicken go, Jeff?
No, we're not going into all that. Let's go a different direction.
Sing old McDonald, Jeff.
Seriously.
Hey, can I say something else about?
Yeah,
Bryan brought up the thing about James Conner going over 100 yards would be Ben's best stat. You know what's even better? I say Benny Snell going over 100 yards, because that's the guy, if they have a big lead and they want to just pound the ball like they did last year, where they kind of saved him for later in the game. Imagine him just controlling the game at the end. That would be great news for Ben Roethlisberger.
Let's stick with this trend here. Let's stick with we're looking at specifics, and we're looking for some type of justification. So in Roethlisberger, it's a justification that he's back. You know, we spend a lot of time involved with the fan base, whether it's here on YouTube with the live chat, whether it's on behindthesteelcurtain.com in the comment section, whether it's on social media platforms. There's a multitude of ways that we interact with fans. I feel that we as hosts of these shows have a actual finger on the pulse of Steelers Nation. And yeah, there's a million more fans than we interact with, but at the same time, they all kind of think alike. Let me ask you this. What outcome would it take for Steelers fans to say, that's right, here we go, let's get it going? Because the Steelers typically do not start fast. They didn't start fast last year. There have been other years that have been bad. What would it take for Steeler fans to not really have anything to gripe about? And please save me the 49-0. Obviously, they wouldn't have much to say, but think about it. They're on the road, so much uncertainty, not knowing about the opposition, not knowing, new coordinators, new head coach, not much tape about how Jason Garrett's going to run his offense up there. Bryan, what would it take for the Steelers fan base to be happy after Monday night?
Well, definitely a W, but not a squeaker. They're not going to be happy with a squeaker over the Giants. And I think, and you'll hear more about this on your show tomorrow, Jeff, that, don't expect it to be a cakewalk, not a walk in the park, like you mentioned on the show. So really, I'm thinking anything over a 14-point win, the fans would be pretty happy with. I think health, of course, a healthy outcome too. And Ben looking sharp and not struggling. If Ben has his line from the 2005 Super Bowl, then fans aren't going to be happy with 9 for 23.
Even if they win?
No. I mean, they're going to be happy with a win, but they're not going to be happy with a bad stat line.
Yeah,
because that means that Ben's not back to them.
What about you, Dave? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, as you know, there will always be at least a portion of the fan base that the Steelers could win that game 49-0, and because it wasn't 50-0, they think that Tomlin should be fired. That's
right.
just the way it's going to be. So I think it's a combination of things. Fans will be happy if they hold the Giants to single digits, or if they go over 30. They don't have to do both. I think if they do one or the other, they will be able to focus either on that great defense or on that offense's back. And then if they do both, then fans should really be happy.
I'm curious as to how long the leash will be for Roethlisberger if he struggles a little bit in week 1. If it's a little sloppy, and that doesn't necessarily mean turnovers. Like a pass sails on him, maybe he skips a few, throws one behind a receiver. We know what those are going to look like. I'm curious I wonder how long is the leash going to be with the fan base? Are they going to give him okay? All right,
you're
Ben,
not talking about leash of them like pulling Roethlisberger.
No. I'm talking about
just making sure people don't misunderstand.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about that
happening.
I'm talking about the fans' perspective of all right, Ben, you had a game, got it out of your system. We expect better at home on Tuesday on week 2 when the Denver Broncos come to town. Or is it going to be all right? There's 2 stinkers. I'm curious about that. We don't have an answer for that, but that's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on as we go. But let's hope that they don't have to. If Roethlisberger comes out and looks sharp, Bryan, you're shaking your head. What are you thinking?
First quarter, they make their decision in the first quarter of that game, Jeff, or at least by halftime. You guys know that Ben's done in that. They just got to bring Mason or just lose all the games and get that.
Well,
Trevor
they're not
Lawrence
going to
from
say that about.
Clemson
They're not going to say that about Mason. I know that.
Yeah,
that's not happening.
There's that fan base. There's sections of that fan base that will do that, and they should just lose all those games to get that Clemson guy in that. And they're not going to do that either.
Oh, it's such a horrible.
Hey, that's my best accent, by the way. No, you're saying my Yinzer accent's not good?
It's I don't know. It's something. It's right up there with your Australian. It's right up there with your Australian.
None of my accents are good, but my Yinzer one I can do. I grew up Yinzer.
So okay.
Do I get a turn at this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. It's you kind of got to put your fan base in quarters of how they're going to be with the game and with Roethlisberger. I know this because I'm exposed to so many other people like this, that nothing's ever going to be good enough. The sky is always falling. They're always going to be a bunch of bums. We have that. It looks like for the most part, those of you that are maybe here on YouTube right now, and in the live chat, that's not you. That's not you. You're going to understand. You're going to be the homer, and you're going to be like, hey, Ben hadn't played in almost a year. Even if he struggled, as long as the Steelers get the win, he's going to find it out. It might just take us a little longer. There's no preseason, and like Bryan said, there's going to be the fans that if that first pass doesn't look fantastic and go for a 75-yard touchdown, then Ben should have just hung it up and shouldn't have even bothered to have the surgery because he's not going to help us. So unfortunately, the reality is more, I wouldn't even say in the middle, but we need to be patient with Ben. But at the same time, Ben is not going to be satisfied with that kind of performance. So it's really not even about our leash and our patience with him. It's going to be more about him.
Yeah, no, you're right. All right, you answered this, Dave. You already said you think it is. What number is I forget because it's still going. The turnover streak.
Oh, I forget now.
It's over 20.
I've tried to forget about it so long.
I think it's 22.
Yeah, I thought it was like 26 or something.
No, I didn't think it was 26. No. I think it's either 22 or 23.
Yeah.
Someone in the live chat might remember, but
it's
still
one of those bad 2019 things that we've tried to block out. Cree says it's 21.
Maybe.
It might be. I mean, I could look it up while we're talking if you give me a minute, but
no, it doesn't. So, Dave, you think it continues? Bryan, do you agree? You think it continues?
Just because there was no preseason.
I get it.
Yeah, I think only one though. I mean, I don't think they are going to turn over the ball a lot, but it's a possibility.
I think they win the turnover battle. I just still think they're going to have one.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it ends.
Oh.
I think they're going to play a clean brand of football. I don't think Ben's going to take a lot of chances in this game. And I think that the ball carriers hold on to the rock. And I think they do win the turnover battle. Last question before we get into our players to watch. Over-under time. A little bit over-under time for you guys. This came to my head. Over-under sacks by the Steelers defense in week 1. Team sacks. I'm going to set the line at 4. Over, under. Bryan, what do you have?
They're going to get 3. So under.
Okay. Dave?
You don't think they're going to get more than 3 sacks?
I think this is a typical Pittsburgh Steeler first game. With no preseason, it's even more of a first game. So, no, I think they're getting 3.
No, Jeff, you could have set the line at 6 and I'd have gone over. I mean, seriously, I think they're going to get.
We think they're playing the Browns?
No, but what I'm saying is the Giants have very inexperienced, big question marks at both tackles.
Yes.
I mean, and they're going up against TJ Watt and Bud Dupree, let alone the inside guys. And if the Steelers offense can do anything and make the Giants have to pass, my goodness, they could just have a field day back there. It could be, and this is me. I am, like I say, I like to go west. I say this all the time on the Scobro show. Bryan would know this because I'm the king of wishful thinking, that I always think that the Steelers are going to show up and do their thing every time. That I look at what could be the best possible outcome. And that's what I always feel going into the season is best possible outcome. What could it be? And the best possible outcome is that the offense is more than adequate. And therefore the defense can just own the game.
For me, when Bryan says, there's no preseason, and yeah, that can be a hindrance to a lot of teams, but the Steelers defense basically comes back intact. They lost Hargrave. I understand that. But other than that, it's pretty much the same guys. I mean, they're going to be able to pick up right where they left off. I don't feel like the defense needs as much adjusting as an offense does. It's just like in baseball, where they always say at the beginning of the season, pitching's always ahead of hitting. The hitters have got to get used to it. They got to get acclimated. I feel like the defense is going to be not necessarily the game that's going on right now, but I feel like that the defense is going to be, especially for the Steelers, is going to be able to stand tall and make plays as it comes. So we'll see. I think it's an over. I think they get about 6 sacks of Daniel Jones. I don't think that their offensive line. We'll talk about it. I don't want to get too far into our players to watch. Let's talk about players to watch while we're at it. Pittsburgh Steelers players to watch. Let's find one offensive player, one defensive player that you feel is going to be critical for the success of the Steelers on Monday Night Football against the Giants. Don't confuse this with their X factor. That's going to be the next question. That's the guy that the game could hinge on. Who's your player to watch on offense and defense, Dave? We'll start with you. You can either do one at a time or you can do both. That's up to you.
Well, I'll start with defense and then I'll yield to Bryan and let him decide if he wants to do defense or he grab the offense first. To me, it's obvious you're watching TJ Watt. I mean, this might be his best matchup of the season with such a big unknown that he's going up against. Watch him, and because he has a chance that he can just take over this game. That's the guy to watch for the Steelers defense.
Okay, what about you, Bryan? Who you have?
Devin Bush. Devin Bush needs to be the guy along with Vince Williams, because Vince Williams is your run stopper. But Devin Bush is going to see a lot of Saquon Barkley, because Saquon Barkley can catch the ball out of the backfield too. And that's where he could be even more dangerous, I think, than just running the ball. So I'm really looking at DB Jr.
If I'm giving a Dave Schofield answer, I would say, well, whoever they decide to put in the Mark Barron role, it could be anyone of Marcus Allen, blah, blah, blah. No, I'm going to go with Stephon Tuitt.
What?
People forget about Tuitt. Cam Hayward just got a brand new deal. But Tuitt has been, I guarantee he's been chomping at the bit just to get out there and make plays. And he was so dominant at the beginning of 2019. I did a whole show on him on my Let's Ride morning show about how he's the key to this defense. He's the key to the Steelers not missing Javon Hargrave. I still do believe that. I think he's going to come out and he's going to be wanting to dominate. And I'm sorry, the Giants offensive line as a whole is not impressive to me. I feel like that this could be, if they get Daniel Jones into 3rd and long, it's going to be a race to the quarterback. It's going to be who can get there first to get the sack. And so it's just a matter of whether they can do that. So we just did defense. Dave, let's go to offense. Who's your offensive player?
Does Bryan want to do it first? I don't want to take his.
Okay, Bryan, go ahead. If you want to go offense first, go for it.
Well, I'm changing my answer because of the Deontay Johnson injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really going to say, I was either going to say James Washington, but I'm looking at Eric Ebron here, because I really think that he is going to have to be the guy that is going to lead this team in receptions a little bit more. He's going to have more of an opportunity to with all of those wide receivers. I'm thinking it's going to be Ebron. Johnson not being out there is going to put a lot of eyes on Juju Smith-Schuster. So I think it's going to be Ebron that's going to get the opportunities.
All right, David, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say I'm not ruling out Deontay Johnson. Today was basically the first day of practice for the week, although it was really their third. It was the first injury report. So it's really tomorrow will really tell a story. Can he get out there for at least a limited action? Remember, Juju was the same way last year for week 1. He had a foot injury, and he ended up being able to come and play. But I like Bryan shifting gears there. I'm going to go a little bit different route. I think you got to be looking, a player to watch is you got to look at Zach Banner. You've got to see how much did he grab that role rather than win it by default, and to see that that's what the Steelers are going to do and have and not feel the need to have to put Matt Filer back at tackle and know that that's the job that's being done there. You got to protect. I would say I would also would have thrown in maybe like a Wisniewski, but we don't, we assume DeCastro is not playing, but that's where you got to be looking at. So you could even say that right side of the offensive line.
Both good answers. I'm going to go with a guy that has a heck of a lot to prove this year because it's likely his last year, and that is James Conner.
Oh, okay.
I think it's James Conner. I think James Conner, he's been healthy in training camp, and he's getting to start with a clean slate. And trust me, he's a guy that knows exactly what's said about him. He hears everything that people are saying, how he can't stay healthy. He can't do it. He's not the bell cow. He's not the guy. It's up to him to actually I think what Bryan said earlier was spot on. Maybe the best Ben Roethlisberger statistic is 200 total yards, team rushing, and 100 of those going to James Conner, something like that, where they can run the ball effectively. That's going to be critical. So there you have it, our offense and defensive players to watch in this upcoming game on Monday Night Football. When we come back from this break, we're going to talk X factors, fantasy, betting odds, and we're going to give you our predictions. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, we are back for part 2 of the Steelers preview. I am Jeff Hartman, co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Joining me is Dave Schofield, that other co-editor, Bryan Anthony Davis, the PP, the podcast producer.
I giggle every time you say that, dude. I'm such a child, and so are you, Jeff. I love it.
Yes, we are. So in the first part, if you're listening in the audio platform, you heard us just at the very end talk about players to watch, and we talked about offense and defense, but now we go into the X factor. I've always done this as a separate segment because I feel like the X factor is the one player that his performance could hinge on the team's victory or defeat. So this could be offense or defense. It could also be special teams. Anyone, doesn't matter. Let's go with Bryan first. Go ahead.
Wow. I think it's Ben Roethlisberger. I think Ben is your X factor. It all comes down to what he can do and if he is back.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough to argue that. Dave, do you have anyone other than Big Ben?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going somewhere different, and it's got a little bit of explanation with it because it's got to be a Dave answer.
Exactly.
I'm going with Vince Williams.
Oh,
I'm going with Vince Williams because the first thing they have to be able to do is to shut down Saquon Barkley in the run. Don't have to shut him down, but just contain him. Barkley is the only player for the Giants that I feel can make it to where the Giants could defeat the Steelers. Otherwise, I feel it's just the Steelers not doing enough to win. He's the only thing that really scares me. But that's just me. Maybe I'm naive like that. But the explanation I want to have with Vince Williams is also making sure that they're putting him in the right position, which sometimes is going to be on the sidelines, and making sure that he's not the guy out there having to cover Saquon Barkley in the passing game to where that's not going to be his responsibility, and that's where Devin Bush comes in. So it's Vince Williams when he's out there, and also Vince Williams when he is in the right role in passing situations.
I'm going to go with a guy that Bryan used as his defensive player to watch as the X factor, and it's Devin Bush. I think there's a good chance he's going to have the green dot on his helmet this year, and he's going to be the communicator. He's that key hub in the middle there that's going to have to make sure everyone's on the right page and everyone's doing the right thing. That's a lot of responsibility for these two that he's such he's a year 2 linebacker. I mean, he's going to have a lot on his plate. He can make or break the defense from, you talk about Saquon Barkley. I mean, that's ideally his job and his role to stay with him. That's not an easy task. Let's talk about that for a second before we move on to our fantasy focus. Guys, if the Steelers lose this game, how did they lose it? I guess that's the question. Think about all the different ways that we've seen the Steelers lose these weird and strange games. I have an idea where it typically starts, but Dave, we'll start with you here. What happens if the Steelers are losing this game to the Giants?
Well, some people I know, they were liking to say this in the live chats, is, the Steelers play down to inferior opponents and things like that. I don't see how you can feel that this is an inferior opponent in 2020 with no preseason and not really knowing. This is just too much of an unknown opponent to take them lightly in that way, in my opinion. If the Steelers don't walk out of there with a victory, it's because they just didn't have it all put together yet, in my opinion. And if they don't, it's hard to say if they'll catch up. That's what it really comes down to, is, are they going to have it all together? And I'm mainly thinking more offensively than anything.
What about you, Brian? If the Steelers lose this contest in week 1, it is because of what?
Saquon Barkley runs wild, making life easy for Daniel Jones.
Yeah. You're right. There's really nothing else to explain. That's exactly what I was going to say. And what I told Ed Valentine when I was on his show today, he said, if he asked me the same question, if the Steelers are to lose this game, what does it look like? I said, well, they turn the ball over and they can't slow down Saquon Barkley. I don't even think Saquon Barkley needs to go off. But if he gets 3, 4, 5 yards a clip and they create third and manageables for Daniel Jones, it's going to make his life, like you said, Brian, a million times easier. And so for the Steelers, they need to stop Barkley early, get a lead so that they're playing from behind and they can't lean on the run, and force them into obvious passing downs. Let's not underscore the value of special teams in this game. Not only Boswell kicking field goals, but also punting. My gosh, we finally have a legitimate punter now. Thank the Lord, Jordan Berry is gone. I said my prayers. He answered my prayers. But we'll see if Colquitt can do the things that Berry couldn't, and that's consistency, pinning teams back deep in their own end. We'll see. We shall see. Let's hope we don't have to talk about that next week, by the way. But let's shift gears a little bit and go to fantasy. Fantasy football, we are all in a FanDuel league together. You are not invited. No, I'm just joking. We're in a FanDuel league together where it's daily fantasy football. You are given a salary cap. You pick your team. You have to stay within that salary cap. Guys, who are some Steelers that if you were picking, I guess in this case, because it's a Monday night game, you would have to pick just that game. But even if it's a regular fantasy league, who are you saying that people, hey, if you have this guy on your roster, you should definitely start him? You can go 1, 2, whatever. Brian, we'll start with you.
James Conner. I think it's a James Conner night.
Really? Okay. Yep. That's it? No one else? Okay.
Oh, you know what? If I'm going to start somebody else, I'm actually starting Saquon Barkley in a league too.
Really?
He's not going to get crushed.
If you have Saquon Barkley on your team, if it's not daily fantasy, then you never not start him.
Yeah, in daily fantasy, I'm not going to
daily
pay
fantasy.
For him.
I don't think I'm touching him there. Just
it's not a good matchup. Not a good matchup. Okay, Dave, what about you?
My biggest winner is the Steelers defense. I mean, I'm trying to trade for him in my one non-daily fantasy league right now, because they are what they are. So that's number one. And honestly, you're going to think I'm going to cop out. I think Chris Boswell is a good play. I really do. I think, the offense, are they going to be going enough to put it in the touchdown zone every time? Or they're going to have to settle a couple of times for field goals. So I think they'll they need to move the ball, hold on to the ball. And if they have a lead and they can move the ball and they just can't finish off drives, then they'll just take the 3 all the time.
I'm going to go with Eric Ebron because I think that he's actually going to be putting up a lot of points. I think he's going to have a lot of yards. I think that Ben is going to have a really strong connection with him as long as he can stay healthy. But guys, are you bold enough to play Chase Claypool in week 1?
Yes.
Are you really?
You know
because
why?
Claypool's getting all this publicity. I wrote an article. It's going to run tomorrow at 7:00. Randy Fiedner saying he's going to probably play a lot early on. That's so rare for the Steelers. But are you bold enough to play Claypool? Bryan, you say you are? Go ahead.
Yeah. You know why? Because he's going to be cheap.
Yep.
For daily fantasy. And yeah, I'm going to try to, no, not in my regular league because I don't have them, but daily fantasy, that's probably one of my moves.
Okay. Dave, you going to give Chase Claypool a shot first?
I'm gonna look at who. I don't know what the values are on these guys. I should have looked them up, like what they are on FanDuel right now. Because if you're talking about cheap value for Claypool or Washington or McDonald, or even Ebron, because he hasn't, if you get a cheap value on any of those guys, I would grab them as my cheap guys. I really would, because I mean, any of them, and then you just spend all your money on anywhere else. I mean, if you're talking a regular fantasy and he's sitting on your bench, that's tough to start him week 1. But daily fantasy, if you've got to have one of those guys that comes in cheap and you got to throw him in there so you can spend your money other places. So I think Claypool's a good play there.
That's one of those where you look like a genius if it plays out. If he catches a touchdown and has 75 yards and also has maybe some rushing yards or something like that, you're like, wow, who pulled that out of their hat? But at the same time, if he doesn't really play much and doesn't see like 2 receptions for 5 yards, you're like, gosh, that didn't.
Do you know how many times last year I went with the cheap Steelers receiver and got 0 points out of James Washington?
Year offensively for Pittsburgh, you shouldn't have picked anyone.
It might have even been the year before where I've tried to go with James Washington. Oh, he's so cheap. He could do something this game, and 0.
Yeah. I won money off of Raheem Mostert until everybody figured him out.
Yeah.
And then his value went up. So, you get those guys. I mean, you look at some handcuffed guys, and when their value is down, the Giants running back, I don't even know who it was, the backup to Saquon Barkley last year, won me some money just because I put him in and he was cheap at the time.
Yeah, no, you're right. Anyone bold enough to play Ben Roethlisberger as their quarterback in week 1?
Yes.
Really? So daily fantasy, what?
Well, I'm
saying like I'm not playing Ben in week 1. I'll pick a million other quarterbacks over him. Not that I don't think he's going to play well. It's just not where the money is, in my opinion.
But his price isn't as high. His
I
price
don't even know
will
what
not
his
be
price
as high.
is.
We don't
FanDuel.
know yet, but I'm telling you, it's not going to be in the Mahomes range. It's not going to be in the $91,000 range or $9,100 or however they do it. It'll probably be around 7,000, and he'll be cheaper. And then you could pull a guy like that and still not get killed.
Okay, Dave.
Here you go. When it comes to Ben Roethlisberger, if you're playing the whole weekend, I would not. Meaning, if you're doing like a daily fantasy, but it's not just a day, you're doing Sunday and Monday games combined. No. If you're looking at just Monday's game, and even if it's just both Monday's games, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a regular league and you picked up Ben Roethlisberger, and he's your guy, you're going to start your guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. But at the same time, if you're in a daily fantasy league, it's a little bit different.
I didn't, but I had Mahomes.
Well, yeah.
He now has 2 touchdowns.
I'll tell you what. I mean, you look at this fantasy stuff, like the Steelers defense, I think is going to be a must start almost every week. And they're going to be expensive, but I think they're going to be worth every penny because I think they're going to get a lot of points and takeaways still. They're going to get sacks. They're going to hold a lot. I think they're going to hold a lot of teams to field goals this year. Hold a lot of teams to field goals. So let's get into a little bit of predictions here, David. Let's go with the odds. What's the latest odds on this game?
All right. The latest consensus odds from oddshark.com. It's .com. Yeah, it's .com. Is the Steelers are 6-point favorites and the over-under is 46.
6-point favorites, and you said it's 46?
The over-under is 46. And for those of you that are watching live, yes, the Chiefs touchdown is under review. It's their second touchdown that's been under review this game. So,
all right, let's start with you, Dave. What's your prediction for the game?
Am I giving my score as well?
Yeah.
My prediction for this game is I predict the Steelers to win. I predict them to cover, and I predict that score to go under because the Steelers are, because they're going to have to put up 35 points in order for them to go over that point total, because I have them holding the Giants to single digits. I'm going with a final score of 26-9.
Wow. I would be super pumped if that happens. That's literally one where you're sitting in the second half and kind of sit back in your easy
go
chair.
West.
Like,
I'm just going to keep saying, go West. I am the king of wishful thinking.
Brian, what about you? What's your prediction?
I was about to start singing there. 26-20 Steelers.
Hey.
I've already put it in print, so.
Someone copied me. Sorry.
Yeah. You said 26-20?
Yeah. I went 26-20.
The defense gives up 20 points?
So you think Brian's calling it a push. He's not saying that they,
Well, let me say that our picks that we put on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com today, they had it at the Steelers giving 5.5.
It was 5.5. So.
Yeah, so that's a little different.
And Bryan took the Steelers, so that's why he's going with 6.
Gotcha. All right. I can't believe you would think they would give up 20 points, but that's fine. That's your
guys.
Your
it's week 1. I'm telling you, this is not going to be easy.
I did a whole show on that this morning. I
know they're going to win this game, but Saquon's going to get his, and you never know with a turnover, it could happen. So I'm saying 26-20.
Okay, I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers winning the game. Shocker. And I think they're going to cover. And I'm going to take the under. I think the final score is going to be Pittsburgh 24, New York Giants 13. Okay, so I think that they do win. They do cover. And that 13 points, I think that might be close. This game to me, if you remember what, Dave?
Bryan not only took the push on the spread, he took the push on the over-under.
Oh, really?
26-20.
And I made this prediction this morning because you saw me. If you looked at my article, you saw it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. That's okay. I think the Steelers, this game is going to remind me a lot of, was it 4 years ago when they started the season in Washington on Monday Night Football? Wasn't it that the game where Antonio Brown caught the touchdown and did some hip thrusting and got a penalty for it? That game started off slow. It was kind of sluggish at first, and then I think Ryan Shazier got an interception, which kind of turned the tide, and they kind of ran away with it. I think that's going to be similar. I think it's going to be close to start. So there you go, folks. We all think the Steelers win in different fashion, but we'll see where we are after next week when we're getting ready to talk about the Broncos, how we did this week. Before we go into trivia, I feel like we should spend a little bit of, and we have the time, to talk about Ryan Shazier a little bit.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure we talk about it, in case you are living under a rock. Ryan Shazier officially retired from football, finally ending this debate that we've been having with fans since 2017 about will he, won't he, should he, shouldn't he? And I've always taken the same stance every time I've had this question asked, and that is, if he wants to, let him go. It's his life. And if he wants to try to play, let him try to play. If it motivates him to get better, let him keep that in mind. But, Dave, you actually interviewed him and you asked him this question. So you kind of have a little bit more, a better knowledge. But what were your thoughts on listening to Shazier and his, that press conference was tough. I mean, there were he talked about how difficult it was. And then when Tomlin and Vince Williams jump in and then Kevin Colbert jumps in, Dave, what were your thoughts on Shazier and the ending of it all? I saw your tweet, by the way. It was hysterical.
You know what? I think that's my most shared tweet I've ever had. So for those of you that are wondering, the tweet was, it was one of these quote things. It was my wife in a panic saying, "What's wrong?" And it was me in tears saying, Kevin Colbert just said Ryan Shazier will always be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And I mean, Kevin Colbert they didn't have one screen. All they had him was the audio, and you could hear him getting choked up. You could know that Shazier was choked up. That was tough, but that was one of 2 choke up moments for me in that interview. And I hope I can get through the other one. The other one was he was asked if he's made any big milestones in progress. And he said that he tackled his son, that was something that he hadn't been able to do, that his son ran away from him. And he just, took him down and went to the ground and tackled him, like a dad would tackle his son, like I've done with both of my boys so many times, although I have to be careful because I'm enormous and I could really hurt them if I fall on them. But when I heard that from Ryan Shazier, that got me, because that just showed you that his milestones now are life milestones and family milestones. And that just spoke so much to it. He was a fantastic guy. He was super nice in that interview. If you guys hear the audio, there's a disturbance in the middle because his wife brought him lunch and he wanted to make sure that he thanked her for it. And that just showed that he was just a regular, normal guy. And I got to sit there and actually be video chatting with him. That was probably the most amazing experience that I've had, thanks to Behind the Steel Curtain. And he said that, it's always about the guys, it's about his friends, it'll always be there, but there's also going to be other things in life for him. And that was before this announcement. So just, wow, just what a player, what a person. I don't know that they'll ever retire it, but I think it's gonna be a long time before you ever see someone wear number 50 again in black and gold.
Agree with that. Brian, what are your thoughts on Shazier?
I will never forget. We did the post-game show, Tony Defio and myself, right after that game. And it was the worst feeling ever. Worse than any loss, worse than anything, to watch him lying on the field and not knowing. You knew it was bad. And you look back to guys like Dennis Byrd from the Jets back in the 90s, and you think about it, and it was a devastating feeling. And you're thinking about how young this guy is. And you saw it in the press conference the other day. All I wanted to do for so long is play football, and it was taken away from me. But like Dave said, he has come to grips with it being taken away from him, and he did it on his own terms because he decided. Nobody told him he had to do it. He decided it was time to go this time, and he has a great team around him, and that team is the Shazier family. His parents, his kids, his wife, and the Steeler family. That was a big thank you to the Steeler family, and it was reaffirmed when Kevin Colbert, Mike Tomlin, and Vince Williams were on there. He was so tight with Vince Williams, and I'll never forget Vince Williams crying on the sidelines. Oh. Big, burly, mean Vince Williams, the guy that was going to challenge Burfict to a fight on South Beach if he saw him. And this guy was reduced to tears. And he was there to support him. And the way he talked on the interview with Dave about who he still talks to. And there was a number of guys that he still talks to. And he is very much a Steeler. And he will always be a Steeler for us. And I would love to see him on the sidelines again as a linebacker coach, as something. It would be great when COVID clears up where he could come back and be a part of this team. But this is the triumph of the human spirit that this man is walking right now. And he's able to have a family. And he's not confined to a wheelchair, because those were great possibilities for Ryan Shazier. And now, even though he's given up the game he loves, he has such a future, a long time on this earth. And that's the only thing that we want as human beings. So this guy's won. He won today by being able to not just retire, but walk away from the game. And I mean walk. And that's what he's doing.
I think that NFL players and professional athletes in general, oftentimes they get pigeonholed into one thing. And Shazier said, I've literally played this game since I was 4 or 5 years old. That's all he's known. It got him to the NFL. It got him to Ohio State. I think now he wants to try to see what else is out there. I literally don't think he's going to come back to football right away. He might do it in a different capacity. Like, I already read that he's going to be doing a podcast talking about the NFL in general. I think that he wants to get his degree, and he's just going to try to see what else is out there. And that's, hey, more power to you, man, because you know that the Steelers will bring him back. All he has to do is pick up a phone and say, can I join your scouting department, or can I help be an assistant coach? And they would say, you bet. I mean, Kevin Colbert saying what he said, it's second only to Jack Lambert's Hall of Fame induction speech. If I could do it all over again, you better believe I'd be a football player, and you better damn well believe I'd be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I mean, you hear that type of stuff, it gives you chills, even as a fan. And so Ryan Shazier is a special individual. I would never have the opportunity that I can see in the future, but I would love to actually have a conversation with him about what he had to go through mentally to get back to just where he is now. I can't even imagine. I literally cannot even imagine. You saw the outpouring of love from his teammates and other players on the NFL on social media. He was a motivation for a lot of people. And so I think it's good that Shazier went out on his own terms, that he calls it a career, and that he's moving on to his life's work, as Chuck Noll would say, whatever that is. And so I know that I'm going to be a fan of Ryan Shazier no matter what he's doing, no matter where he's coaching. I'll always wear my Shea Leave shirt with pride, and he will always be a Pittsburgh Steeler. So there you go. It's a horrible transition. Shoot me now. But still, let's finish up with some trivia, Dave. What do we have on the trivia side of things?
Oh, man, I wish we would have done this sooner. That's all right. We'll do some trivia. This is some general NFL trivia. This isn't Pittsburgh Steelers trivia. And it's because of what the Steelers are going up against this week, where they're facing Saquon Barkley, who is starting his third season in the NFL, as he was the number 2 overall draft pick for the New York Giants in the 2018 draft. I went back to look at how, do running backs go this high very often? And they do not. I looked at running backs that went either first or second overall in the draft since the merger, and there are 14 of them. And that's all. Barkley was the first one in 12 seasons when they went back to back. In 05 and 06, there were players that went number 2 overall, with Ronnie Brown in 05 and Reggie Bush in 06. But what's crazy is there's actually 3 Penn State running backs that have gone either first or second overall in the draft. Saquon Barkley is one. Who are the other 2?
Franco Harris.
This was.
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
He said Franco Harris. I don't know if you heard him.
I did say that. Yeah.
This
Since
was
the merger.
Merger.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The merger. Yeah, that was 72.
Okay. He was not. He's not on my list. What's wrong with this?
Oh,
boy, Jeff is correct. Okay,
I thought I was correct there.
I'll go with you. Are correct. I'll go with Blair Thomas.
Oh, hold on. I clicked away. That is correct. In 1990, he was drafted number 2 overall by the
New York Jets.
New York Jets.
Larry Johnson, was he early?
Nope. He was.
No.
He was 25th overall.
Yeah.
Was he? Okay.
He was. They made that
round
trade with for Palomalu. He was involved in that.
Okay.
He wasn't involved, but the Chiefs were. Kajana Carter of the Cincinnati Bengals in 1995.
That is correct.
And I already said Blair Thomas.
That's it.
With the Jets in
1990. You said there's 3.
I was going to say, you said Franco Harris. Where did you think he was drafted?
What?
When you said Franco Harris, what position?
What are you talking about?
Franco was drafted around 13.
He was 13th
Yeah.
pick. Yeah, so he was in the top 2.
Okay,
I'm like, wait, you guys are making me question this. I'm like,
no, because he was the number 1
I always
draft
thought
pick.
he was. Yeah.
So are we missing one?
No, that's it. You got all 3 of them.
So
because Saquon Barkley was one. Yeah.
Oh.
So the one that was difficult was the one that I didn't know that Bryan was going to get was Blair Thomas, because he, out of all running backs since the merger, taken in first or second overall, had the least amount of touchdowns and most pretty much other stats. He didn't even hit double-digit touchdowns for his career with the Jets, and only played 6 seasons. But this brought me back to memory lane. Just to say this was out of everyone listed there. Who was the number 1 overall pick running back who you don't think of a number 1 overall pick? You actually think of him as a 7th round pick.
No idea.
Number 1 overall pick running back.
That you don't really classify usually as a number 1 overall pick. You think of him as a 7th round pick.
Since the merger.
Yeah. how quickly we forget that Bo Jackson was taken number 1 overall by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and didn't play because he was the reason that he couldn't play baseball his last year in college because they lied to him. And so he got drafted in the 7th round the next year and then actually played. It was crazy.
Absolutely.
But there are not many running backs that go that high. So Saquon Barkley is, and usually it's either feast or famine for these guys. And so far, Barkley's having a pretty good year. So he's probably, I don't know about you all, because the Steelers, they got to go up, they got to go against Derrick Henry, week 4, and other ones. I think Barkley might be the best running back that they have to face all season.
Maybe. They do have Ezekiel Elliott still.
That's true too. They got a lot of running backs. They got a Nick Chubb twice. I mean,
yep. Kareem Hunt. That's a heck of a backfield. Him and Kareem Hunt. Yeah. And then they also have to play the Ravens twice.
Yeah, don't forget about Ingram and Dobbins.
Yeah,
and Lamar. So, all right, guys. Any final words? Anything before we call it a show? Dave, we'll start with you. Anything good for the order?
Yeah. I'm keeping up with my wishful thinking with everything going on. I'm really excited about this game Monday. I kind of almost got to forget that it's happening until it gets close, so I just don't go crazy and drive my family crazy. But hey, make sure you're ready to go. Jeff made a really good point. Don't forget that it's a 7:10
7:15.
Yeah.
Well,
Bryan?
I'm going to go with Dave's theme of the night. And I'm going to say this about the NFL offseason and the Steelers offseason. I'm just going to say, I'll be over you. I know I will. I'll pretend my ship's not sinking because I'm the king of wishful thinking. Go Steelers.
There you go. Very good. All right. So make sure you follow us on all our podcast platforms. That's Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, Anchor, Spotify, Pandora, you name it. Wherever you find your podcast, check us out, as well as BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. And by the way, Dave wants to say something else.
Yeah, because what I should have said before, there's still time to enter the contest, even though there's a game going. Yeah. Get to BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. It's one of the top 8 articles for a signed Marquise Pouncey football. You can still enter. You just obviously can't pick this game from tonight. We're looking for more entries. Anyone can enter. Just only enter once. Tell your Steeler friends to get in there.
Get a signed Marquise Pouncey football. All that information is right there on the main page. On the front, the 2 blocks, black blocks, you'll see Marquise Pouncey. Win a Marquise Pouncey football is one of those. Make sure you check out Let's Ride, my show tomorrow morning, where I give you a lot of good information in my picks. And then tomorrow evening will be what show, Bryan? Tomorrow at noon will be the preview, but then we don't have no show. That's right. We don't have any show.
No show on YouTube. Just a break.
Womp, womp.
But lots of stuff on Saturday.
That's right. That's
Touchdown
right. So
Under, Brunch with Tony. And then on Sunday, you're going to get a Steelers pregame.
Touchdown Under.
Yeah. Touchdown Under.
All right. So tomorrow night, everyone should be looking for the audio of Jeff's injury report because that'll be out there instead. For Bryan and Dave, I'm Jeff. BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Go there. Enjoy it. We'll see you.